Paul, thank you very much for coming. Really pleasure having you here. This is the second podcast we're doing. We had a different plan for this for the second podcast, but when Diego Maradona passed away, you called me because we had actually shared a lot of memories together back in the day when he was appointed, when you were covering Al Wasl Football Club and some of the other clubs in the league, and you were doing a story about Maradona, and you said, let me speak to Tariq and get some of his thoughts, and then it just in that moment when I was talking to you, it just brought so many memories back that I ended up hogging your entire article. And what happened was we also realized that there's a lot still to talk about. So I said, you know what, great, we have a podcast. How about we get those stories out there? And this is why you're here. Thank you so much for coming. One thing that happened back in the day was, as a PR agency, we were following certain principles, certain protocols, disciplines. We were recommending based on methodologies that we believe are correct. And then, you get to work with someone like Diego Maradona, and that all gets thrown out the window. And this is why we're here. We're going to talk about a bit of how PR rules were broken, but in a good way. We'll get to that when it comes to PR, but from a journalism perspective, I just wanted to get your sort of, thoughts on how did it change for you before Diego Maradona was here and then after he was appointed?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tariq. It's great to be here. It was brilliant to speak to you the other day, actually, for the story. As a sports writer, obviously, massive news all over the world, Maradona's death. And the stories that we wanted to do for the paper, we wanted to localise it. Obviously, he managed over here 2 teams, Al Wasl and Fajira as well, and it would have fitted the remit and fitted the story to have found his former players, his former coaches, and asked them for their recollections of him. But I really wanted, knowing you and knowing the stories that you would have, I really wanted to get hold of you to see if you could sort of give us a few recollections of that. And you said you ended up dominating the story. I knew that was going to happen. It was absolutely fine, because a lot of the stories that we were writing at the time were Maradona's died, this is what whoever ex-player XYZ thought about it. I knew as soon as you answered my call that the whole story was going to be you speaking. That was just what I wanted, to be honest. It was sort of planned as well. And I just knew that having been so close to him at that time, you'd have these brilliant stories, and you didn't fail to deliver on that. I think we spoke for 43 minutes. Wow. And I more or less just said hello. And that's why I was so happy to come back here now and hear a bit more about it.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, the thing is, there are stories that are, the typical, how he dealt with a match, how he sort of motivated his team. But also, as you know, working with a club, I learned a lot. So for every press conference, for every post-match press conference with Diego Maradona, there's always that post-press conference with the other team's coach, which I would sit there as well. And I would sometimes even have to translate for that coach, for the visiting coach. The difference is just massive. Even some of them, they're quite, Zenga is also one of the coaches that I work with, that I, sort of sat next to and in some of the post-match press conferences when Al Nassr used to visit Al Wasl. So, but still, is this something about, of course, Diego Maradona that made it always, you never know what to expect. And this was the anxiety that was there for before he just came to, before he was unveiled. And I'll tell you about that.
Yeah, Tariq, I distinctly remember that first press conference. Sabir Sarab. Maradona's coming to be unveiled as the Al Wasl manager, obviously. It's not something that you have every day. So what was that sort of experience of managing that press conference like, and your first experience of Maradona?
Unlike any other experience, Paul. We've managed a lot of press conferences by that time. I personally have moderated press conferences. I've actually even sat down on a head table a few times to translate when needed. But again, going back to the PR rules, every sort of situation has its own sort of set of rules as well. For press conferences, for instance, time management is very important, and the punctuality is even more important. We always stress to our clients, they have to be there on time. We have to start on time. We send out an invitation saying 10 a.m., maximum 10:15. We got to start the press conference. We get there before the media. The client's there before the media. Everything is set. There's rehearsals. With this press conference, completely the opposite. I mean, I hadn't met Maradona ever in my life until he actually walked backstage before we stepped out to the head table for him to get unveiled. So my interaction with him from the minute I saw him to the minute he was on the table was, I would say, 2 minutes. So I had met my client for the first time ever 2 minutes before I'm going to unveil him to the world.
Your biggest client ever.
And I don't know what to expect. We couldn't do any rehearsals with him. We had to explain to him very quickly. I had to speak in English. Someone's translating to him. We're going to have to put a headset in your ear. I'm going to give you the channel to hear. I'm going to be moderating. We're going to give a chance to the media, of course, to ask questions. But before that, the press conference was supposed to start at 11 a.m. He had just flown in from Argentina. He was completely jet-lagged. When the entire hall was set, and I'll get back to the location in a minute, when everyone was in that room, when we had a full crowd, and I asked for an update on where he is, and they told me he just woke up. So can you imagine my anxiety when I know that there's a room filled with 200 people, and my client, Maradona, of course, just woke up. So I'm imagining now, gonna have a breakfast, maybe have a cigar, okay? I don't know what his routine is. I don't know how he's gonna be. Is he ready to do a press conference? He just woke up. And I've got a room full of 200 people. This is where I had to remain calm. I had to keep going out on stage, reassuring everyone that, listen, some people started doubting, are you sure he's coming? I'm like, yes, he's coming. But the difference is, we were supposed to start at 11. He showed up at around 12:31. So people were there for 2 hours waiting. No other client of mine would have been able to keep people sitting for 2 hours waiting for him. We had to book the music hall at Zabil Sarai just to be able to accommodate the amount of people. We realized early on that the press room facilities at Wasl Club are not going to be suitable. No way. And I went to Zabil Sarai and I went to the music hall, and as soon as I walked in, I'm like, okay, this is it. This is perfect. Like the stage, the amphitheater sort of setting, the balconies. I'm like, this is fit for this guy, this legend that's going to grace our presence. And this is what happened. So we kind of went with it. He was very supportive, very collaborative, very humble. Like I was telling him what to do and how we were going to sit out, and he gave me full control in the press conference to allow people to raise their hand. I would give them the opportunity to ask questions based on my choice of people. I wanted to mix it up between international media, local media. I wanted to mix it up between English, Arabic, and so forth. And I wanted to also, I was also wary of time. But every time I felt like, because there's like hundreds of questions. Every time I was wary of that, I would look at him and he's like, keep going, no issues. So I'm like, this is fantastic. He's he wants to give them as much time as possible. And of course the chairman of the club was there as well. I was trying to get some media to ask him a few questions because he's also an important figure. Mm-hmm. He's one of the important people that made this happen. So but yeah, I would get a few questions in there, but then everyone would come back to Maradona, of course, understandably. So yeah, everything that we would do to prepare for a press conference, nothing of that happened. I wasn't able, but again, one of the most successful press conferences we ever held, coverage all over the world, and that's where it all started.
You said to me on the phone the other day that there were never any situations where he was uncontrollable or unmanageable, but there must have been a few where he pushed it quite close.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there was a few. One of the funny, interesting ones where we were playing at Banias, and Banias's club is in Abu Dhabi, and post-match press conference. We come in. The usual routine is I just welcome everybody and I say we're here for the post-match press conference with Al Wasl Football Club's coach, Mr. Diego Maradona, who will give us his thoughts on the match, and then we will take your questions. And that's exactly what I did. Now, in a press conference table, usually they place some beverages, water or some juices in front of the table, in front of the speakers. And at that time, there was a big rivalry between Al Wasl Football Club and Al Ain Football Club. It's always been there.
Yeah.
But it grew even more.
I do remember
with the presence of
managers.
Diego. Absolutely. They are known to have the biggest fan bases. Wherever you go to the stadium in Al Ain, it's jam-packed. Same with Al Wasl. Their coach at that time was a tough guy as well. He wasn't intimidated by Diego whatsoever. They had their, fair share of, back and forth in the media. They kept it clean though. But yeah, they became, the coaches, the two coaches that were always going at it, and the two clubs going at it. So Diego Maradona I didn't think he knew that much about the, football league here in the UAE, but I think a few months down the line, he's established that Al Ain are the ones to beat and the ones that are going to be giving them most trouble, and the rivals. So that being said, we sat down, I just introduced him, and he looks in front of him and he sees one of those plastic water cups that's branded by Al Ain. And so what does Diego Maradona do? He does what Diego Maradona does. He screams out, he's like, Al Ain! And he grabs that thing and he just flings it over his shoulder. And I'm like, at that moment, everyone laughed. Of course, Diego Maradona did it in a very funny way. He did this expression where it was just out of humor, out of his own character. He didn't do it in a way that, that's disrespectful. But still, at the spur of the moment, cameras are shooting. I could hear the cameras going tuck, 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 as that water cup was flying across the room. And I'm thinking now, oh God, holding statement, apology, crisis communication. How am I going to convince the media not to write the headline? We're in Abu Dhabi, and it's sensitive. He doesn't know all these things, but I'm thinking all of that. I can't show emotion. I can't laugh. It was funny. But all that's going through my head, and he doesn't know. And for him, I am someone who's just going to translate what he's going to say. He doesn't know that I'm sitting there planning the PR, thinking of the next day's headlines, thinking of what could go, how the fans are going to get at it. Thank God it was okay. Nothing really major happened from that. But these are some of the things that, in PR, you have something called the crisis communication, program or manual or something where you plan ahead, you create scenarios of anticipated scenarios of crisis, and you actually, put down certain reactive things. So you say to yourself, if scenario A happens, this is what you do. If scenario B happens, this is what you do. With Diego Maradona, I could not create any scenarios. I don't know what's going to happen. I was always, in the beginning, yes, scared in the first few months of something, but I could tell you, a year and a half working with him, thank God, only a few moments. This was one of them. It was more funny than actually scary. But yeah, this is him. This is what he comes with, and you just have to deal with it. And that's what we did. And it was, just it passed the next day. It wasn't a big deal. But I still remember. I still have a picture of that moment where you could see the water thing flying, and just hilarious.
But you've mentioned it quite a few times about, from a PR perspective, him breaking the rules and you just having to sort of go with it. Is there any other instances that stick out?
Yeah. I mean, there was many things that he did sometimes that were completely, there was no, they weren't abiding by any of the rules of the PR book or books. But some of the ones that I can recall, before a match, we would get there, of course, before time, before the match starts, before the fans get there. And I would never see him. I would just see him on the pitch during training, before the match, or even when the match starts. And then I would see him at the post-match conference. But this instance, we went to a club. There was a match somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Abu Dhabi, I think. And I'm driving into that club, and I see him sitting in the middle on the floor, in the middle of nowhere, in the grounds, like the parking lot or something. There was a manhole. He's sitting on that. He's got his phone. He's checking something on his phone, and he got a cigar. He's smoking a cigar, and I am just saying to myself, oh my God, like, some media are gonna start coming now. That's definitely a photo op right there. People are gonna start taking photos. They're gonna put it out there. So at the end of the day, he's my client, and he's like, so if I had a client, this company, and there was a CEO, that would be Maradona. So if I was coming to somewhere for an event, and I see the CEO of a company sitting on a manhole, I would go up to him and tell him, Chief, listen, some media might come. You don't want to be seen in this situation or something. Or listen, some media are coming now. You don't want to get people taking pictures of you just because, that's what they're going to do. Regardless of where he's sitting, let's get it inside. But I can't do that with him. So I just honked. I'm like, hey, Diego. He's like, parked the car, went to him. I'm like, all good? He's like, all good. I'm like, okay. I can't do anything about it. I can't tell him to move. I can't tell him to change his position. He's comfortable. He's sitting. He wants to sit on the manhole in the middle of the desert. So, but that's when I think to myself, and as I was walking away from him, I'm like, Tariq, I mean, if a few years ago someone told you that at some point in time in your career, you are going to be driving into a club in the middle of nowhere because you represent Al Wasl football club, which I grew up loving, by the way. I was born and raised in the UAE. I loved Al Wasl, like a lot of fans here in the UAE. And I have to plug in Sharjah as well. I was a Sharjah football club fan. Okay, so for the guys that I know who are gonna maybe take a jab at me, I was born and raised in Sharjah. So two clubs, Sharjah and Al Wasl. So I thought to myself, Tariq, would you have ever thought if someone told you that in a few years you're going to be driving to a club in the middle of nowhere in Abu Dhabi because you represent Al Wasl Football Club and you represent Diego Maradona, and you're going to see him sitting on the floor on a manhole with a cigar and his mobile phone, and then you're going to be doing his translation for his press conference? I mean, there is no way you can make this up. There is no way you can think of this scenario. It happened. I was blessed. But it's a situation that I had to let go. Another one was, as PR professionals, we are not spokespeople for our clients. They are always the spokespeople. We train them. We tell them what to say sometimes. We give them guidance, recommendations, but we don't speak on behalf of our clients. But when it comes to Diego Maradona, I found myself sometimes obliged, and I didn't do it except for once. And that was because it was a kind of a exceptional moment. He had just been admitted to a hospital to do an operation on his kidney stones. And media found out that he went in to get an operation, and there was a frenzy all over the world because no one knew what he was in for. It was pretty on the hush-hush. People didn't even know which hospital he was in. I didn't even know until like 2 days later which hospital he was in. So we started getting inquiries from the media, like how's he doing and all of that. And he was fine. I got updates that he's fine. He's going to be on his feet soon. And imagine, and I was, like I told you, Paul, I was working in an agency and I had other clients. So I was getting my day-to-day done most of the time. And then at the end of the day or on the weekend, I'll be working on Al Wasl. And I'm sitting on my desk in the office and I get a call, an international call. I pick it up, and it was a Colombian radio station calling me, asking me about Diego, and they want me to get on air and explain to their fans and to their listeners about Diego's situation, give them an update because they were really worried. I told them, but listen, he's fine, he's doing okay. Operation went well, he's about to leave, he's about to be discharged, he's going to be on his feet in no time. They're like, perfect, this is what we want. I'm like, but I'm not a spokesperson. They're like, listen, please, we don't have time. You're going to be, we just want you for a few seconds on the air. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you know what? I'm not saying anything. Everyone knows that he'll be fine. I am breaking the rules, but in a good way, I would say. And they called me a few minutes later. I was live on the air. The guy asked me in English, and then I had to say, Diego's fine. He had a very positive or let's say a successful procedure. He's doing fine. He'll be back on his feet. And you can reassure your listeners and fans, and they're like, oh, thank you so much. And they had to translate that in Spanish as I was on the air live to all the fans. And that is, first of all, you don't do that. You don't represent your, but I did it for a good cause, I would say. But that showed you the amount of just because he was admitted to hospital for a few days, people went crazy. People want to know what's happening. So I can't imagine what people are feeling right now. It's really a hard times that people are living with his death. The last one I would say is, again, in press conferences, I usually always do it, say, make sure my clients' phones are silent. I would even tell the media guys, before you start, let's switch our mobiles off, please, because it's very, very annoying for someone's phone to go off during a press conference. And but of course, Diego Maradona being Diego Maradona, I told you this story. He took a phone call in the middle of a press conference. But of course, because of the way he did it and the way he planned it, it was okay. So this was he wore 2 watches. One was always on local time. One was always on Argentina time. He claims that it's always on Argentina time because he needs to make sure that he knows what time his grandson goes to bed. His grandson is Sergio Aguero's son, Benjamin. He had such an amazing connection with his grandson. He's a family man, by the way. He loved his family. Unbelievable family man. And there's a special connection with him and his grandson. And he said that he always has to call his grandson, or he has to get a call from his grandson before he goes to sleep. So Benjamin cannot go to sleep before he speaks to grandpa. So of course, he timed it perfectly, where his daughter would call him at around 7:15 because he knew we had a 7 o'clock press conference. And he made sure that he's going to answer the phone during the press conference because it's going to just be this amazing moment. And that's what happened. He put him on speaker. He made sure we all listened. And he kissed the phone. He kissed him good night. He switched the phone off. He put it aside. And of course, that was the headlines the next day. And it was all over the media. And it was on Facebook and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, can I tell him to switch his phone off? I'm not going to tell Diego Maradona to switch his phone off, especially not when he's going to get a call from his grandson. So, see, these are some of the funny stories where all the rules were broken.
What about crazy moments, Tarek?
Look, there were crazy moments during some press conferences, but the craziest one I would say was outside the club, nothing to do with the press conference, where early days in Dubai, they wanted to show him around, get him a bit oriented with the city, and they decided, I don't know if it was a very good reason, a very good idea, to take him to Dubai Mall. They might have thought that, how many people are going to recognize him, and they had a couple of security people with him from the club, but not just a couple of guys, and they decided to take him to Dubai Mall. And I think it just took a few minutes before the word got out. People started recognizing him. Is that Diego Maradona? Is that Diego Maradona? Oh my God. And then it took one person with a bit of courage to get up and say, I'd like to take a photo. Knowing him, and especially in that phase, still new to the city, he was very friendly with everyone. He said yes. And I think that's when mayhem started. A lot of people wouldn't go up to Diego to ask, but this guy was, courageous enough, brave enough. And Diego said, okay. And I think the second person said, hey, I want to get on that action. And then before you know it, tens and tens of people started stampeding towards him. This is where we had to literally find the closest shop. I don't remember what it was. And quickly just sort of run him into that shop and ask the shop and the security to close the doors, to lock them, because there is no way we can handle the crowd. Yeah. We did not anticipate that reaction from the people. And it's imaginable. You see Diego Maradona and you say to yourself, oh my God, this is the only chance I'm going to get so close to this guy. And no matter who you are, it doesn't matter. It's not like he's a certain fan, a certain celebrity that some people like, some people might be okay to just take a picture from them. No. You're talking about people from all walks of life. Kids, grown-ups, different nationalities. Even if you didn't cheer for Argentina, or even if you're, I don't know, if you had nothing to do with football, you just wanted to be close to him. And this is what happened. We had to lock him in a store, completely lock the doors. We had to call security and police to be able to disperse the crowd just so that we can make it and give him a safe passage outside the mall. And it was something that was surreal. Of course, that shop got free publicity. And for us, from a PR perspective, I was just thinking about this shop and how much, they didn't do anything. One day they're sitting and the salespeople are just, folding shirts and stuff. And then before you know it, Diego Maradona is stuck in their outlet. He's stuck and people are, jamming the door and ramming the door and everything. And you're thinking, wow, this is great publicity. Well, congratulations. You're welcome. Maybe we should take a cut or something. But yeah, this was a crazy, crazy moment I'll never forget.
Yeah, so that sounded pretty crazy, Tarek, that one. Also, you mentioned to me on the other phone in the process of me doing my story the other day, about a few unexpected visitors that he got just at training sessions.
Yeah, that was crazy. I remember walking into the club one day and seeing Roberto Carlos there. They didn't even tell me he was visiting. But one of the ones that were really, really unexpected, and the way it happened was really funny, was we're sitting there, he's having his training session. For us and for me, it became normal for Diego to be there. So I see him in the training sessions. I just hang out for a while, but then I'm doing my own thing in the getting ready for the pre-match press conference, so which usually happens after his training session. So I'm sitting there in the admin, just outside the administration office, outside next to the parking lot, with the representatives from the club and the person handling the media office for Al Wasl. And this taxi cab pulls up, and it was quite late, not very late, but the sun was down. And this gentleman with his kid, his wife, another kid, just came out from the cab, and they're making their way towards us slowly. And I look, and then I take a second look, and that's when I realized, okay, this is Robin van Persie approaching us unexpectedly. We did not know he was coming. Sometimes a lot of the visitors we would know about, it would be set and arranged, but this was very random. He comes, he's like, hello. I'm like, hello. And he's like, is this Al Wasl Football Club? I'm like, yes, it is. He's like, is this where Diego Maradona's coaching? I'm like, absolutely, yes, correct. He's like, is he here? I'm like, yeah, can I help you? He's like, yes, my name is Robin van Persie. I'm like, we know who you are. We know you're Van Persie. But what time is your meeting? Has it been? It's like, no. I don't have a prearranged meeting. I'm in Dubai on a visit. I'm here with my family. I just thought maybe if he's here, I can just watch or say hello. And I'm like, of course, man, what are you talking? Of course, man. Like, oh my God, like Robin van Persie is here to say hi to Diego Maradona unexpectedly. So of course, I take him back to the bleachers. The only club I think that had set up bleachers in the training grounds because there was a lot of fans there watching. And of course, I went and told Diego, listen, I told the translator, tell him that Van Persie is here. He just wants to say hi. He's watching you from the training ground. If you have a chance after you're done. So Diego called me. He's like, come here. He's like, where is he? I'm like, he's sitting right there. What does he want? I'm like, nothing, man. He's just here. He just wants to say hi. He's like, was this arranged? I'm like, no. He's here on a vacation and he just came in a taxi. So he's like, absolutely. I'm gonna meet him. Let him stay. I'm like, done. He's here to stay. So of course I get him back in the bleachers. I'm like, Van Persie, Diego's very happy that you're here. Please, just have a seat, and he'll be with you as soon as he's done. As soon as he saw Van Persie, Diego Maradona called for a mini match quickly, put on his bib, whistled a free kick. Probably wasn't a foul, but he whistled the foul. Made them stand on a wall, curled it into the goal. Everyone crazy. Van Persie's like, oh my God, and Diego made sure that Van Persie saw that Diego still got it, and that was one of those unexpected moments. Very fantastic to recollect.
Yeah, Tarek, you said to me the other day about you being professional and always just basically as much as you could, like, which was virtually all the time, just translating what he said. But were there times when he actually engaged with you in the press conference? And how did that sort of that relationship start?
It built up with time. In the first few months, of course, it was just, I don't think he even knew my name. I would just shake his hand. He'd sit down. He'd start. He'd finish. He'd shake my hand, and he'd leave. That's it. That's the maximum engagement I'd get. But I think as he saw my demeanor, I think as he started to, we started to interact more. I think with the certain situations that took place, we started to build this bond. And he's a very friendly guy. He makes friends with people, no matter who they are. He doesn't have that ego about him. He doesn't, honestly. And I told you during my interview with you that sometimes, because of the duration of the translation, he'd act as if he's sleeping.
Yeah.
So that was funny. He would sometimes call me Johnny Depp. So he'd say, Johnny Depp and Brad Pitt. He'd call the Arabic translator, and there's nothing that resembles us to these people. And I don't know why he would say that, but it would be funny. Sometimes, hey Johnny, I'm like, okay, fine, I can't take a jab back at him, of course. But what happened was, during my work with him, I was able to take some time off, go to the Maldives, It's just for some, time of recreation. And at that time, there was a pre-match press conference and a post-match press conference, and they had a sort of someone to fill in for me. And when I came back, I knew that he didn't do a very good job. This person, Diego, wasn't very happy. But I mean, he just did nothing really catastrophic happened. So I came back, and of course there was the next pre-match, and I was there, and he started to answer the first question, and Arabic did it, and then I started. And of course, by that time, I became very, very, very good at it. It took me a few seconds to write. As soon as the Arabic translator is speaking, I just put some pointers down. It's all in my head, and I just start speaking, and I'm doing it very naturally. And that's what the English media really appreciated. The amount of information I was giving them, the flow of the answers. The thing I would add a few things sometimes that I felt are necessary to the answer, without changing the narrative of Diego's. So I was doing my thing. As soon as I started speaking, a few seconds into it, he started clapping. He was like, "Thank God you're back. Oh my God. Don't ever go on vacation again. Don't leave me here. The guy before you." Oh, and he put his hand behind my back, and he's saying in Spanish that the guy before you, I had to wind him. We had to wind him just so he would speak. And it was like, oh my God, what's this guy doing? It's time, And he's like, "So, Tarek, thank you." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you always make fun of me, while I'm speaking and you fall asleep. But now you're happy that I'm back." And he's like, "Hey, And that was an amazing interaction between him in the middle of a press conference. And it was something that I felt, this is, I think, one of the moments where I felt we've become buddies. We become more comfortable with each other. And that was just fantastic that he appreciated my absence. And now I felt like he knows what I'm worth, and he knows that, I'm not just translating, I'm actually adding value to his presence in the club.
Is there anything that sticks out in your mind as being one particularly difficult moment, perhaps the most difficult moment you had of your time with him?
Yeah. Funny enough, it wasn't even with him. This was after the season was over. He played a very important match, the final of the Gulf Cup. Al Wasl hadn't reached that final in a very long time. It would have been a perfect moment because it would have been silverware for a very long time. Imagine a picture where Al Wasl are crowned champions of a tournament. Diego Maradona is holding that cup with the players, and so they were banking a lot on that. Tournament didn't go the way it was planned. It was a very bad ending to that tournament. I remember we didn't even do the press conference. He just stormed out. I kind of felt that after this moment, things are not going to go well. But that was the end of the season. That was it. The league was already over. The cup was already over. This was just the Gulf Cup left. And the Bahraini team won it. And and that was it. And then, everyone went on vacation. And I remember, it was August, I think, and I went to Istanbul for a few days. At that time, the management, the board of directors resigned 3 days after that match. It wasn't the best scenario, like I told you. And a new board was appointed. And by the time that happened, I think one of their first decisions was to terminate, to cancel their agreement with Diego Maradona. I didn't interact with the new board. I didn't know any of them. And I was in Istanbul, and I was in the middle of, it was evening time. I was out shopping with my wife, and in the middle of the street, and I get a call from Dubai. I answer it, and it's the club. It's the media officer at that time telling me, "Tarek, the management, the new board had taken a decision to terminate Diego Maradona. And they had to issue a statement." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll write something up. I'll send it to you tomorrow." He's like, "No, it has to happen now." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm in Istanbul. I'm in the middle of the street." He's like, "Tarek, now." And I'm like, why the urgency? So I told my wife, "Listen, I need some time. Just go and go and shop by yourself. I need to do this right here." I found a wooden bench in the middle of a street. I sat down, took my BlackBerry out. I started writing the statement. Very short. I had to write it in Arabic and English. I wrote it, emailed it to the client. I wrote it with a heavy heart because I thought to myself, that's it. I'm never going to see him again, you know? And why? Like, why? You know, it wasn't his fault. But anyway, I cannot interfere. They're my client. They took a decision. I have to execute. And I'm like, fine. I wrote the statement. I sent it to the client by email through my BlackBerry. Still sitting on that wooden bench in Istanbul. I can't forget it. They replied. They're like, approved. This needs to go out now. I had to formulate a media list on my phone, started to attach all these emails of the people that I know. And I thought to myself, of course, I'll send it to some of the guys from Associated Press, Reuters, the guys we became friends with. And I started sending out the statement to the media from the bench I was sitting on in Istanbul through my BlackBerry, using my, international roaming. It took me a whole hour by drafting it, getting approval, sending it out to the media. Yeah, as I was clicking send, I'm like, oh my God, this is at the end of this era, you know? And then I called my wife. I'm like, let's go. I don't want to do shopping anymore. I just want to go back to the room. I wasn't in the mood.
Mm-hmm.
I get to the room. I kid you not, Paul. Switch the TV on. Just, keep it in the background. CNN was on it was CNN. It was one of the only channels in English in the room. And true story. Sports news on the ticker. Al Wasl Football Club in Dubai sacked Diego Maradona. And I didn't know how to feel. I looked at my wife. I'm like, listen, I want to explain to you what just happened.
So that was all in the room by the time you got back?
45 minutes max, tops, wow. Paul. All right? It was world headlines. And I told her, listen, I want you to understand what just happened. I just wrote a statement on my BlackBerry, on a couch in the middle of Istanbul. I sent it out. 45 minutes, here we are, and we're seeing it on CNN. I'm like, no matter what I do for any of my clients, all right, even if I'm sitting in CNN and I'm giving them the press release, I will not get it on the air like this, let alone sending it out from my BlackBerry in Istanbul on a couch. This is who he was. This is the attention he got. It felt amazing that this happened, how quick the news went out there, but it felt also bad that I had to read it. And that was sort of, for me, I thought, that's it. I'm never going to see him again. Thankfully, he stayed in Dubai. He lived here. We became friends. I met him a few times, went to his home a couple of times. We shared some great moments. And my condolences, my best go out to his family, to his friends. I am privileged to have known him. I am honored. And he's a man that really changed my perception about him when I dealt with him. I read some of the comments out there these days saying he should not be celebrated, his life should not be celebrated. That's rubbish. He is a one of a kind. He's a legend. He is a family man. He's a caring person. Everyone makes mistakes, right? Just because he's Diego Maradona doesn't mean he can't make a mistake. We should forgive him for that and just really celebrate his life. And I'm thankful that I have the chance to tell these stories. This is the second time we've chatted in 4 days, and there's still stories to tell. And I'm sure I'm just one person out of hundreds, if not thousands of people that engage with him that have amazing stories to tell as well. So I hope people enjoyed what we had to talk about today. Paul, again, thank you so much for joining us here on this podcast. Very happy to have you. And I hope everyone enjoyed this, and I hope everyone stays tuned for the next podcast, hopefully.
Absolute pleasure to listen to you all day on this subject, mate. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Take care, my friend.